Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Daily Penguin. This is our tour through that Penguin Classic wall behind me, where we're just taking the books as we find them. No imposed order or rhyme or reason at all. And that has led to highlights and lowlights and a few doldrums. And it's been useful for me, in addition to talking about these books with you, it's also been useful to me because that wall, nor any other wall in my personal book collection, should have any doldrums. Right? There shouldn't be any doldrums. If I encounter a book in my Penguin Classic wall that I have only because it's a Penguin Classic, that's a good reason to get rid of it. There'll still be plenty of Penguin Classics to make a wall. And today's book is a perfect example of that. This is a recognized canonical master of 19th century British prose that I have never particularly liked. And that's Thomas Hardy. This is Tess of the D'Urbervilles. In a nice Penguin Classic edition, this is edited by Tom Dolan, with an introduction by Margaret Higanet. And I don't know why I have any Hardy, honestly. I recognize when I read his prose that it is extremely well done. There are sections in Tess of the D'Urbervilles, especially towards the climax. There are the famous bravura opening of Return of the Native, and a bunch of other things. Probably a couple of passages at least in every book, but no book that pleases me as a whole. This was brought out in a book form in 1892 or 1893 after having first been serialized and brought out partially, and met with a lot of puritanical objections because it was fairly sexually frank for its day. But ye gods, none of that, if you want to call that excitement, none of that excitement comes through on the page as far as I'm concerned. It's my number one problem with Thomas Hardy is not the quality of his prose. His prose is beautiful. My number one problem with Thomas Hardy is that he is an absurd novelist. And I don't mean an absurdist. I mean he has no idea. His books are absurd. They're silly. Characters don't have recognizable motivations half the time. And when they have motivations that are clearly stated, those motivations are perverse or weird or otherworldly. And when Hardy decides to lay on the "oh, woe is me" melodrama, he lays it on with a trowel. So that in Tess's case, for instance, in this novel, she never gets a chance even to crack a smile. It's just a well-off or not, the poorest caste English novelist who decides to write about the wretched of the earth this way, whether he intends it or not, is putting them forward as zoo specimens, or worse, as the lunatics in asylums that used to be chained to the walls and visited by tourists in the unenlightened days of pre-medical medical health, where people who had violent dissociative disorders would just be locked up in a cage and visitors would pay to look at them. These are freaks. A great many of Hardy's characters are freaks. I don't know why he thought that. I don't know why he wanted to write that way. I don't understand it of a lot of his direct contemporaries, either in America or in Europe or in the UK. But it sure isn't, for me, all that enjoyable to read. I don't know. Maybe a lot of you are Hardy fans. I am not. And so finding a paperback copy, a Penguin copy of Tess of the D'Urbervilles, when I have Penguins double stacked, is a perfect illustration of why I'm one of the reasons why I'm doing this March of the Penguins, because there's no reason why I should have Hardy in a Penguin or any other version. I know from repeated tries that this is just not an author I get along with, and it's not for one of my usual reasons, which is that he is falsely venerated. He is rightly venerated. It's just not all the veneration in the world is going to make you get along with every single author in the canon, right? That's just not going to happen. And I don't get along with this author at all. It's not a question of being angry with his books because they are bad and no one seems to be willing to admit that, like with D.H. Lawrence. Instead, it's that they're, I guess, well done, worthy, but not for me at all. Not at all for me. And so it's not a question of completism, right? Because your library should never be about that. It should never be about other people. It should be about you. So there isn't any particular reason. If I ever have a need, I can't imagine it, but if I ever, let's say for instance, well, what would be an example? Let's say for instance that there's a 1,000-page new biography of Thomas Hardy that comes out, and for some reason I want to read it and review it. I might feel it incumbent on me to reread Tess of the D'Urbervilles or Return of the Native or Jude the Obscure. I might feel it incumbent on me to do that. That is actually the only conceivable circumstance in which I would think that I would voluntarily seek out Hardy to read. I've done my time with this author, his poetry and his prose, and it just doesn't work at all. What he's doing that is clearly meant to please an audience, I'm not part of that audience, definitely not. And so sort of getting the old scent back for the review of a big biography would be pretty much the only reason why I would revisit these books. And if that need arises, well, there's Project Gutenberg, right? There's Project Gutenberg that has all of Thomas Hardy for free. So, you know, if that need arose, I could go to my iPad and have every book by Thomas Hardy, certainly all the books that I need to reread by him, in under a minute. That I could read. They don't take up any space. They don't cause any books to be double stacked or blocked or at all. So what I'm saying is this has to go. Thomas Hardy has to go. It doesn't matter that there are chunks in here that I like. I don't like the book. So your Penguin Classic for today, in terms of recommend, I try to round out a lot of these things by talking about a recommend, and well, that's going to be really hard to do here. I don't know. In fact, I'd be interested in hearing. This would be a perfect instance where I'd be more interested in turning things around and asking you what you make of this. Do you like Thomas Hardy? Do you actually like him? Do you like his novels? Do you enjoy them? And if so, can you give me any tips? I'm sure this won't be the only Thomas Hardy that I have. I'm sure that I know that I have Far From the Madding Crowd, at least, in a Penguin. But I probably have others as well. And right now, I can't conceive of returning to them. And so right now I'm thinking that in the spirit of this Daily Penguin, they should probably go. If you think that's a crime against nature, let me know. But otherwise, your Daily Penguin, when it comes to the recommend part, is a little tricky, because all I'm going to be able to say is that I can't personally recommend this book or anything else by this author. But that, of course, that flies in the face of consensus, and not in the meaningless sense of, oh, if the crowd is doing it, then I must do it, but in the sense of the good kind of consensus, the consensus of readers whose opinions I really respect. I've known quite a few of them who venerated this author, not as many as venerated Dickens, but still, this is a case in which it's possible that something is going on that I'm not seeing. I find that hard to believe. I have been reading these books with close attention. I've been asked to teach them many times. I've never taught Hardy. I find it hard to believe that there could be a lot going on here that I don't see, but it's possible. In fact, it must be true, right? On some level, it must be true, because this author has tons of vocal fans. If you are one of those vocal fans, sing out, because I would like to hear from you. But in the meantime, Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy really underscores the fact that has come up a few times in the Daily Penguin, which is that we've been a long time without a Steve Squealer of a book. We've been a long time without that. Without a book that I am just bouncing up in my seat, can't wait to talk to you about it, want to recommend it to the sky. I'm not gonna play on these Penguins. I'm not gonna take a hand in fixing that. Because that is serving a useful purpose on its own. I'm just now wondering. I'm wondering, are we going to go the whole week with books where I'm going to hold them up and say, I'm glad to get rid of this, patooey. I hope not. But we'll see. We'll find out. We'll resume tomorrow and see what tomorrow's Penguin is like. We knew that we're going to be doldrums when we started. And boy, oh boy, we've been at this a long time, right? Many, many months of Penguins. So we're just going to keep going. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube. Oh, and by the way, the Daily Penguin is usually when you get your glimpse of Frida, my little schnauzer. Those of you who are new to the channel, I have an adorable little schnauzer, and I usually stick her face in front of the camera for the Daily Penguin. But she had a bath, and she was wonderful throughout it all. It took barely any time at all. I was incredibly thorough, scrubbed and dubbed her, and she was a beautiful angel of a girl throughout it all, but she has decided afterwards to pout a little, so she didn't want to be on camera. she's pouting probably until she's dry, because it's a little bit humiliating for her to look like a drowned rat. Boy, oh boy. I mean, I always try, every once in a while, I will try to remind her, because she's an Austrian field general, I will every once in a while try to remind her. I'll say, just quietly say, you know, you're 10 pounds. You weigh 10 pounds. It bounces right off her, but boy, oh boy, when she's soaking wet, you can tell that she weighs 10 pounds, and it's not a pretty sight at all, and that affronts her dignity, and I've learned that her dignity is a big deal. So I'm treading gently with the bean until she's dry and feels like more of herself. So she'll be back for tomorrow's Penguin, I feel certain. But in the meantime, I will wrap this up, and I'll see you later. Thank you, BookTube.